episode tonight. I'm going to let Jeremy Woodard take the reins. Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Got a special guest tonight. Even though he is an Auburn fan, we still love him.
War Eagle.
He is he's originally from my original part of him is from Hayden, Alabama. He
That's
is
right.
now the preacher at Crosswinds Baptist Church in Union City, Tennessee, and he is bringing us a little something tonight about his past, his present, and his future. He has endured more than any man I've ever known in real life that I could say that I've talked to. And he still has the attitude that just blows me away. I've never in my life known somebody to go through so much and not quit. And I'm saying he's not times he probably didn't want to quit, but to hear this man's story, if this is not a blessing and also just, give you a boost of just a confidence boost for yourself and where you can go, then you're not alive. So let's just kind of turn this over to Jeremy Powell here. Let him kind of introduce himself and just kind of tell us, how it started and where you went.
I've got the floor. So my story really begins, years and years and years ago. I was born with an immune deficiency, which means my body doesn't fight off bacteria and fungus like a normal person's. So from the time I was a little baby up until the last couple years, I was sick quite a bit, in and out of hospitals, that sort of thing. And was not expected to live past the age of 5. Just to be honest with you, it was the outlook was not super great for me. But really, just had some great medical care. I think had some. I don't think I know had some divine intervention. God was certainly at work in my life for sure, and made it through high school and college. Got my undergraduate degree in biology from Stanford University, and then went and started studying microbiology and immunology at Vanderbilt in the medical school there, and that was when I got called into the ministry, and so went pursuing God in ministry, and went to seminary, and ended up pastoring at Hayden. And I'm sorry I couldn't do more with Jeremy Woodard, but I did the best I could.
What are you gonna do?
Didn't have much to work with on the front end, but regardless of that, had some great times there in Hayden. Ended up here in Union City, and in January of 2020. So you got to realize COVID is just now starting to kind of wreak havoc. We're starting to hear about this virus that we don't know much about, to be honest with you. And in February of 2020, my back started to hurt. In fact, the story goes, we have a built-in garage at our house, and there's 3 steps that go down to it. And somebody was at our back door, and I was in a hurry, and I jumped the last couple steps going down. And when my legs hit the ground, my legs almost gave out. I barely caught myself. I thought, man, that seems weird. My back's been sore, but that just didn't seem right. And the next day, my daughter was a high school pitcher in softball, and I was catching for her. And a ball got away from me, and I got up and I ran to go get it. And every step I took, my legs gave out more. And so I realized something was not right with my back. So we called the doctor. But now COVID is really in full swing, and they have no qualms with saying, we think probably it's skeletal muscular. We think we can't get you into the hospital anyway to do an MRI to check you out. because everybody's afraid that somebody's going to bring COVID into the hospital, and so it's only what they called medical necessities at the time. So they prescribed painkillers and muscle relaxers and all that, and sent me on my way. And over the next couple months, it just didn't get any better. And finally, in May of that year, May the 6th, in fact, I was just talking with somebody about this earlier today, finally got in for an MRI, got in and they did the MRI, and we're full masks and everything. No one could go with me into the MRI. I was in there by myself, and hadn't even left Nashville. We had driven to Vanderbilt to have that done. Hadn't even left town, and got a phone call. And they said, we need you to come back. You have an infection all up and down your spine, all in your brain. It's meningitis. We don't know what is causing it, but we have to admit you immediately. And so they did. I literally, my wife and daughters dropped me off at the curb in front of the emergency room at Vanderbilt. They couldn't go in with me because of COVID. I walked in, I had my backpack and my laptop, no clothes, no toiletries, nothing, and got in, and they immediately start pumping me full of antibiotics and antivirals and antifungals because they didn't know what was causing it. Running tests nonstop, and I spent about 16 days in the hospital before they finally realized, we believe, they weren't even certain, but they really thought it was fungal. Put me on some really powerful antifungal drugs and sent me home. And over the next, this was May, so up through October, I spent another couple weeks in the hospital off and on as symptoms would kind of progress, but I just didn't get any better. I didn't necessarily get worse, but didn't get better. Looking back now, I could see I was getting worse. I was starting to lose some of my faculties, some ability to kind of move and get around. I'd fallen a couple times. And what was happening was the fungal infection was putting pressure on my spine, and I was beginning to lose motion and feeling and all of those things. And in October, we have a board of elders at our church, and in October, a couple of our elders came and sat down in my living room and said, we're going to ask you to take a leave of absence, a medical leave of absence. You've got to get well. And because I'd been pastoring and leading the church all the way up through this point. And so about the end of October, I took a leave of absence, and things progressively got worse. By December, I was, I couldn't hardly feed myself anymore. My body was just ceasing to work, and so finally, my wife and some good friends, through me fighting tooth and nail, and by this point, I don't remember a lot of things. I was beginning to hallucinate a little bit. I don't remember a lot of these conversations, but apparently I fought them pretty hard. I did not want to go to the National Institutes of Health in Maryland, where I'd been seen as a child, my entire life, and I knew that if I went there, I was going to be there for a while, and I didn't want to leave my family and my job and all of those things. And finally, the 1st of January, we ended up going up to Maryland, and they began a barrage of tests and trying to get me situated. I was there for about a month before I came home for Emma's birthday. My daughter was turning 16. And came home, and it was while I was at home that my legs stopped working. And I can remember where I was. I was already needing help to move around. I was using a cane and a walker already, and we had some folks that were helping me get from one room to another, and I had to go up 2 steps. And while going up the steps, somebody was actually helping me go up the steps. And my legs just wouldn't hold my body up anymore. And at that point, we ended up back at the emergency room. My buddy tonight actually was telling me a story. I was over at his house. He was telling me a story. We're at the emergency room here in Union City, and I told him, I said, Tommy, my body just isn't working. I don't know why my body's not working. And they were asking me questions in the ER. I couldn't even stand up straight. He said, or sit up straight. I wasn't standing. I was sitting. But he said I kept doing this. I just kept falling. He said he finally just put his hand on top of my head and just held me up. And whenever they asked me a question, he would turn my head because I just couldn't control anything. And of course I don't even remember that. They ended up admitting me to Vanderbilt again. Did emergency surgery, fused some of my spine together. Some of the worst pain, not some of, the worst pain that I ever remember feeling. I woke up in the ICU just crying out in pain. If any of you guys have read my blog, I talk about this pretty extensively, but you would just, you cry out in pain. It hurts so bad, and nothing is taking the pain away. And finally, I just remember it being dark in the room and me saying, "Is there anybody out there?" And there was a woman. It was my nurse, because you're in ICU. You have only one nurse. And she said, "Yes, I'm here." And I said, "Is this hell?" That was really how I like, because it was pain that never stopped, and it was so bad. And she said, "No, it's not." And I said, "Well, then why won't someone help me? Why won't someone get rid of this pain?" And luckily, shortly thereafter, it seems like they knocked me out. I don't remember much of that, but by now I've lost control over bodily functions, and I've lost control over being able to move, that sort of thing. The surgery did give me some relief. I was able to regain some control over my arms, but still couldn't walk. And they got me stable to the point where they moved me back to the National Institutes of Health. When I say moved me, we were a part of what was called Angel Flight. We have, if you don't have it, here's my PSA: if you don't have that Air Evac insurance, go buy it right now. We had that Air Evac insurance, and it pays for a jet transportation, private jet transportation in the case of a transplant. And so, because I needed a bone marrow transplant, they strapped me to a gurney and loaded me in a Learjet, and my wife and I flew back to the National Institutes of Health. And when we got there in March of 2021 now, a little over, not even a year after being diagnosed, the odds we were faced with were insurmountable. 18% chance of surviving fungal meningitis with an immune deficiency, which is what I had. And then they said your only chance of surviving the fungal meningitis is to have this bone marrow transplant, where they would take healthy bone marrow and put it inside of my bone marrow, basically give me chemotherapy to deplete my bone marrow, put new bone marrow in me so that my body would create white blood cells that worked, because my white blood cells didn't work. And there's only a 25% chance that you survive the transplant. So you have a 25% chance to survive the transplant. If that works, then you have an 18% chance of surviving the fungal meningitis. And I said to him, aside from that, what are my options? Your other option, other than that, Jeremy, is to go home and die. And we think about 9 months from now, if not sooner, you'll die. And so I said, well, I don't want to die in a hospital bed 800 miles away from my kids. And they said, well, we can't promise you that. Those are your options. You can go home, and you're definitely going to die, but you'll be with your girls, you'll be with your kids. Or you can try to do this and still your odds are not good. There's a chance you die here. And I have to be honest with you, it was a hard decision. Jody and I, my wife Jody and I, prayed and prayed and prayed and sought some counsel, and ultimately decided, you know what, for a chance to walk my daughters down the aisle, and for a chance to be at their weddings and hold our grandbabies, let's give it a shot. And so if the bone marrow transplant works, then I'm cured of this disease that I've had my entire life. For 44 years, it's my immune system would be healthy, but no one can guarantee what will happen. Over the next 100 days, or actually about 90 days, I went through chemotherapy treatments, radiation, full body radiation. They had a donor that matched me 100% for bone marrow. Jeremy Woodard, I don't know if you remember, when we were at Hayden, we did a bone marrow drive for me. And so the individual that actually donated bone marrow was a German man, a 19-year-old German man that matched me 100%. He was somebody that went through a drive just like we did at Hayden, and he happened to match me and donated his bone marrow, and they gave it to me. And again, I remember parts of that 90 days. I lost all ability for locomotion. I couldn't move any part of my body. And there's not more of a helpless feeling in the world to need someone to scratch your nose for you because it itches. Having to have someone feed you, bathe you. I was not able to get up and even be placed in a shower chair at that point in time. It was all being bathed in the bed as best they can. Help you use the bathroom. All modesty and shame, all of that just goes out the window. I don't have a say in any of that. It was some of the darkest times that I've ever felt, and I can remember little things like, I worked with physical therapy every day, and they got excited when I was able to do that with my right thumb. Just move my thumb. We were like, hey, look, that's nice. That's exciting. We didn't know how much, if any, of my locomotion I'd be able to get back, because the spinal cord was not severed. It just, the pressure was on it. And so would some of it come back? Maybe. In fact, they felt pretty solid that some of it would, but they weren't sure what. By the time I left the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, at day 90, that's day 90 post-transplant. So April the 2nd of 2021, I got my new cells. 90 days after that, I left the NIH, and I was able to shrug my shoulders, and I've got all kinds of hardware in my neck from the surgeries that they did, so I can't necessarily move very well side to side. Up, down. The doctors told me I'd always be able to tell my wife yes, but no is going to be a problem. And don't worry, I figured it out. But so I went to rehab at Spain at UAB, Spain Rehabilitation Hospital at UAB in Birmingham, and it was not a great experience. And it had nothing to do with the folks at Spain. They were great. I was there for about 6 weeks, and they primarily fit me. I don't know. I speak for a living. I don't know what the right word is, but for this chair that I'm sitting in, which was so frustrating. I didn't want to be in a wheelchair. I wanted to walk. I wanted to run. I wanted to do all of the things that I had always done, and they knew that my best life was going to be in a wheelchair, and so they fit it for me. I couldn't at the time even control it with my hand. They felt like I would be able to control it with my hand eventually, but I had initially what was called a sip and puff control. So it was a straw that would come around, and you would puff into it and suck into it, or suck out of it or whatever, and it would cause my chair to turn and to go forward or backwards. And I have all kinds of stories about mishaps trying to learn how to do that, and nearly broke my foot at one point at UAB, running into a wall, but that's okay. And then they released me to come home, and I was more depressed than I had ever been right before I left UAB, because I knew I was going to be in this chair, and I still couldn't do a lot of things for myself. I wasn't able to feed myself. Still, we had not at that point mastered getting in and out of the shower, so it was still, what we call bed baths. Jody was having to do that for me, helping go into the bathroom, all of those things. And it was, they have psychiatrists that come and talk to you and try to evaluate you. And it, you almost chuckle now, and I would have chuckled very sarcastically then, but they say, hey, do you have any thoughts of self-harm? Do you have any thoughts of suicide? And the answer is, well, yeah, of course I do. But what am I going to do about it? I can't even feed myself, right? Like, I couldn't even take myself out. I would need somebody's help to do that, right? And it's so sick, almost it's funny, because you go, okay, who could I talk into helping me? And would I and would I want to put that on them? You know? You have those thoughts and you come home and you try to reinsert somewhat into life as much as you can, and yet, you're not really dad anymore. You're certainly not a husband anymore. I can't help out around the house. I can't do anything. Every morning we had this what we call a Hoyer lift, and I would get rolled over on one side, and they'd shove a sling underneath me and use the lift to pick me up and put me in my chair, and I would sip and puff my way around the house as best I could. And actually, I take that back. At this point, I didn't even have my fancy chair. At this point, I was still in a loaner chair because they were waiting on insurance to approve all of my fancy chairs. So I would have Abby, my youngest daughter, got real good at driving me around. She would walk by me and use the controls to get me wherever it was I needed to go, and in and out of vehicles. And we have a van that has a little ramp and that kind of thing. And the problem was I had a cyst that had developed in C3, C4, which I know you probably don't know much about neck anatomy, but it's right up at the base of my skull. And it was continuing to put pressure on my spinal cord. And so as a result, real close to the nerves that affected your breathing, your diaphragm. So they were concerned about that. And that cyst could be more infection. It could just be spinal fluid. They didn't know, but it was too dangerous. The surgeon originally felt it was too dangerous to remove. So they literally didn't think I was going to get any better from what I was right now. And then in September of 2021, we got a phone call from our surgeon. He said, look, I've continued to look at your case. There's another surgeon here at Vanderbilt that specializes in that area, and he thinks he can fix it. He thinks he can remove that cyst. and a little risky. It's going to be a long surgery. They're going to have to go in and remove a rod and then rupture the cyst, like popping a zit on the inside, and then they're going to have to flip you over and do some other things. That was surgery from both sides, and put in a shunt so it'll drain, and it's kind of risky, but we think we can make it happen. And I said, man, sign me up. Something's got to give. And in October, that they went and did the surgery, and luckily got me another 4 weeks in rehab. This time at Vanderbilt, and so I go to Vanderbilt, and they begin to work with me. I begin to be able to move my arms just a little bit more. Still not able to do much. They're putting weight through my legs, just trying to get my leg muscles. I mean, literally, my leg muscles haven't been used in 10 months at this point. They've atrophied. They've worn down, and so I get my fancy chair. The week before Thanksgiving, with the sip and puff controls, I've learned how to control them, and they send me home for Thanksgiving, and I'm still not able to feed myself, still not able to do a bunch of things, but I began outpatient therapy here in Union City, and by Christmas time, I had been able to now get my hand up to the controls of the chair, so I don't have to use the sip and puff. But the problem is my muscles are so tired, so I would get in what I call the death spiral, where my muscles would kind of it's called muscle tone, which I always thought was a good thing, but apparently it's not. It would cause my arm to go inward when I got tired. And so I would be driving, and all of a sudden I just couldn't do it anymore. And my arm would just go in, and I'd get in this spin and just pray that no one was around me. Like, I ran over a couple kids at church. I went up on one of those parking curbs one time in our parking lot at church. Like, it was just, and when you get in that, my arm wasn't strong enough to be able to lift up off the control. So I'm just like, somebody's got to stop me. Somebody's got to come and run and jerk my hand off of this thing so I don't kill somebody or myself. But over time, man, it just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And God continued to work through my therapist and develop me, and over time I started to figure some things out. I didn't tell anybody about this, but initially I would wake up at night and just not be able to sleep, and again, just spiraling in these depressive moments, as you can imagine. And I started just going, you know what, I'm going to go through what are called my range of motion exercises, and I could do them with my fingers and that sort of stuff, but my nothing at all, waist down, moved on its own. And so I started just flexing my toes and just thinking about, I'm just going to flex my toes 10 times, and then I'm going to flex my ankle 10 times, and my knee 10 times, and even though nothing's moving, I'm just going to do it. And I'm laying in bed at night, trying not to wake up my wife. And all of a sudden I felt that my toes were tired. And I thought, well, that's a weird feeling. Why, nothing's moving, they're tired. And what I know now is even though I couldn't see them moving, those muscles on a very small level were beginning to work. And I was fatiguing them out, which is exactly what your therapist my therapist has been trying to tell me to do that for forever. I just hadn't been able to put two and two together. And so I went probably a couple weeks without telling anybody, hey, my toes are getting tired at night, and I'm doing it on purpose when I wake up, Yeah. And one night Jody was getting me ready for bed. I used to wear these big boots on my feet every night, and I said, hey, just real quick, look at my toe, and I wiggled my toe, and we were so excited, and over time that motion began to get more and more, and then my ankles and my knees, and one day my stepmother was my caregiver for a long time, really for I guess the first 4 or 5 months that I was at home, 6 months, and she had me in the Hoyer lift, which so I'm just dangling above the bed, and I swung my leg out, and she was like, "How long have you been doing that?" And I was like, "Funny enough, this is the first time." I didn't even know I could do that. That's pretty cool. And so swung my leg out, and the folks at therapy were just elated, and they all of a sudden then said, "Well, heck, if you're starting to get some motion back, some movement back, we're going to accelerate some of this stuff." And so they would strap my legs into machines that normally you would just put your feet on and operate. They would like wrap my feet so that I could move them and try to flex and do. They would hold me up at times. There, I've got pictures of them literally holding me up, and one person holding my knees to keep my knees from buckling, and the other one supporting my weight just to get my body back to feeling weight through my legs, which is apparently a big deal. And then it went from there to they created this contraption where I could hold myself up because my upper body was getting really strong because I was using my upper body for everything. And so I could hold myself up on this contraption and just kind of let my feet, just kind of be on the ground. And that moved from there to me standing at a walker and having them, supporting me with that walker, to me standing with the walker by myself, to me putting one foot in front of the other, to just this last week, they had me walking in the parallel bars with no hands, just my feet. I walked from 10 feet from one end to the other, and then they made me walk backwards, and then they made me sidestep the whole way as well. And I still look like a newborn baby calf trying to learn to walk for the first time. I'm really unsteady, and I definitely don't try to walk without any hands, without anybody around. But I get around pretty well with my walker. I still get fatigued easily, which that's just something that comes with doing it more and more. But now I'm able to drive. I had to take my driver's test again almost 30 years after I took my first driving test. I took my second driving test, and praise God, passed it. Probably shouldn't have because I can't turn my head very well. But nonetheless, I haven't had any accidents yet. And so drive my chair up into the car, transfer over into the driver's seat. I'm able to drive. I'm preaching every Sunday, getting into and work and going to the gym. I do physical therapy now for 4 hours a week, 2 hours twice a day, and then on Mondays and Wednesdays, the 2 other days, I go with Jody to the gym in our town, and they only want me doing about 30 minutes of work at this point. They don't want me to injure myself. But I went today and did some leg machines and that sort of thing, just trying to build up that muscle, because you'd be surprised how 10 months in of not moving at all, and then really a year or more of not even putting weight on my legs, those muscles were just gone. And so I'm having to really rebuild those back. But I will celebrate my third birthday of having new cells April the 2nd here coming up. And I no longer have chronic granulomatous disease, my immune deficiency. It has been completely eradicated from my body. They are slowly but surely beginning to wean me off of all of the meds that I've been on. man, we're just super excited about what God has done and what He's continuing to do, and just kind of wanting to tell the story. For me, one of the passages that Bible passages that God laid on my heart. It's interesting how God does this, but years and years ago, Romans chapter 5 verses 3 through 5 was a passage I came across. I can remember sitting at my kitchen table when I read it, going, "Man, this is really neat." And I did some writing about it in my journal, but I never really had a reason to preach it or a way to preach it, or it just never really fit with anything. And as I was working through the recovery process, it came back to mind again. And Paul, who wrote Romans, he says there that he talks about all the good things that God has done, the salvation that He's given us, that we rejoice in. And then he says, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, which is a silly thing to say. But he says, because in our sufferings, we know that our sufferings produce perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope, and hope does not put us to shame, because of the grace that's been poured out on us because of Christ Jesus. And I thought, you know what, really, to be honest with you, a lot of times we want to avoid the suffering. And really, with our kids, we do this, but we do it with ourselves too. But with our kids in particular, when our kids experience a little bit of suffering, we want to jerk them out of that suffering, and we want to fix it for them and make it easier for them. A lot of times, when we experience heartache in our own lives, we want to hit the eject button and get out as quick as we can. So, like we have the difficulty at work, and we want to quit and go find another job. We have difficulty in our marriage. We want to hang it up and go on and move on to the next thing, and we want to hit that eject button and get out. But what we're taught in Scripture is that when we suffer and we persevere through that, it creates character. And I think the older we get, or the older I get, in particular, I say, you know what? I think one of the things our world misses is people of character. People that are going to do what they say they're going to do, people that are able to experience the hard things and still be a decent human being because of it. And I think one of the reasons is because we're quick to hit the eject button when suffering comes. But suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and that character hope. And that's kind of where I've come, is that without the suffering there is no hope. And man, hope is in a lot of cases the only thing that we have. It's the thing that keeps you going on, and in fact, it kind of cycles back. And the hope is what allows you to persevere in the suffering in the first place. And so, for me, it's the suffering and the coming through the suffering that's created hope. That, you know what, there's more for my life. There's more that God has in store for me. But what I found also is that because of my perseverance, God has been able to create hope in other people by watching me persevere. I've always said that, or I've prayed for years that God would use me and my family to impact this world for His kingdom. And what I found is that when you pray that prayer, God answers it, but you can't dictate to Him how He answers it. And so the way that He's answered it for me is He's put me in hospitals. And he's put me in touch with medical professionals my entire life that will never walk through the door of a church that I preach in.
Right.
But who have now watched what God has done in my life, and I hear from them over and over and over again. I mean, I hear from them every time we talk to them. You don't know what an infusion of hope, they use the word, an infusion of hope. This is our patients get to hear your story because you let us share with them your story. And we as doctors and nurses that work with patients like you every day need to see people like you that have persevered, because it gives us hope to continue to work with those individuals that are struggling in ways just like you were struggling, because you literally were on death's door. You had one foot in the grave and the other on a roller skate, like you were on your way out. And yet we saw God pull you back through that. And so for me, it's the suffering that produces the hope, not only in me and in other people. And so the encouragement that I like to give other people is, hey, when you find yourself in a bad spot, don't give up. Don't be so quick to hit that eject button. Because one way or another, you persevering through that is not only going to give you the hope that will allow you to continue to persevere, but it's going to create hope in other people that can cause them to persevere as well. So, man, that's my story, and I'm sorry that I can't hear any of you guys. I see you nod. So, you told me at one point, Chris, you got to be careful. Chris says just like a sermon, so roll with it. And so you got to be careful because you tell a preacher just to roll with it, and I can go.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey.
Awesome.
Yay. All right.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So that's my story. Sorry that my earbuds were messing me up.
Hey, not a problem.
I tried that earlier too, and it didn't seem to work.
Man, that was a great story. I mean,
yeah, that's the gist of it. There's all kinds of smaller stories in there, but
yeah.
Yes, and just being a part of that, and I mean, the parts of him, maybe being at church and him not feeling well, and you can just tell that there's something going on, and him going through preaching, and then afterwards, you find out, oh, wait a minute, we had to take Powell to the emergency room.
yeah,
It just the perseverance, and I mean, it's really, really admirable of a person to be able to look up. I mean, granted, I know him in a different way than y'all know him, but when we were here in Hayden, we weren't just he was my preacher, and we were buddies. We were
sure,
friends. We
yeah.
played basketball together. We hung out. We messed up and hung out for an Auburn, Alabama football game.
I
And
thought it was a great game, by the way.
yeah, well, that's the only time I almost won't choke you out.
What
I
year?
was
What year were
close.
you in? Were
It
you in
was the
Hayden?
It was the cam back.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
there you go.
yeah. So that was a very hard time for me. I didn't like preachers very much that day, but and the good thing about it though is half his family. His wife is a beautiful, beautiful Alabama fan.
I knew
She
you were
is.
gonna say
Of
that.
course she is.
I knew you were gonna say
So anyway, but yes, I mean, just to hear that and kind of see how things have developed over the years with him, even though he's been,
Yeah.
out of state, and being able to keep up with him, it's really, I mean,
I
it just
wish,
blows my mind.
man, I wish I could take more courage for the perseverance early on, like you're talking about. It was just stubbornness, is really what it was.
sure.
It was just like we have two services here at Crosswind, and I would get to church about 6 a.m. every Sunday morning, and then I would spend the rest of the morning until my 9:30 service on my couch, laying down, because my back hurt so bad. That was the only position I could get in that was comfortable. So we have a picture of me with my laptop on my belly, going over my notes for my sermon. I would preach the first service, and then I would go back into my office, lay back down on the couch through all of the singing for the second service until it was time for me to preach. I would go back downstairs, preach the second service, and then go home and get on the couch again. It's just pure, it was stupidity, to be honest with you. I should have been in the hospital a lot sooner than I was. I was just like, no, man, I'm on these antifungal drugs. It's going to be all good. I'm just going to keep going. And that was finally when my elders stepped in and they were like, this is done. You got to go back to the hospital.
One thing you said about the isolation in the hospital during the COVID, I can I'm familiar with that because I had a little thing happen to me, and man, when you're there by yourself and there's nobody, and you hear, well, I heard like people that had COVID, like just, man, it sounded like you were in a horror film, and they're way back there, but then you're begging somebody, by no means like you, but I mean, I'm
Right.
Yeah, I'm still. I had a doctor give me some medicine, and I died for 10 minutes. I mean, it was
Yeah.
very serious, but I got very lucky very soon. No, it didn't. It wasn't something I had to go through for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But that loneliness, man, that was something
It,
I had never, and I can
it,
only imagine. I can
it can
only
take you
imagine.
some really dark places,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you'll think some really bad things. And uh, I don't know, Chris, you may be this way too, but like for me, it was okay. God, you've saved me. I'm
Right.
alive, but
Right.
man, I wish you hadn't.
Am I on borrowed time, or am
Yeah,
I here for a reason? Is my question every day.
yeah, yeah,
Did I just get lucky? And it's interesting. It really is. It
yeah.
it makes you look at things completely different. And I think that's probably my lesson out of the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, we'll talk about that one day.
Yeah.
But I chased money for my entire life, this, that, and the other, and did none of it go with me that day. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's interesting. Yeah, that's a great story, man. Great story.
So, and now going forward, you're still moving on with your rehab. You're still going forward and moving on with your appointments. Do you still have to go back to the NIH?
Right now, I go annually. Yeah, so I see it's crazy how many doctors I have on my team because I have doctors here locally in Union City. I have doctors at Vanderbilt, and I have doctors at the NIH. I go to the NIH annually. So I went back for the first time last summer because I wasn't able to fly. I mean, it's not, when you're in a powered wheelchair, it's not easy to get on and off a plane. And so last summer was the first summer we really felt like comfortable that I could be on a regular wheelchair. And so we flew back, and man, it was like a reunion. I mean, it was like everybody that we saw because we spent 4 months there.
Right.
Hugs and tears and oh my gosh, I can't believe you can do this now, and all of those things, and just another opportunity for us to say, look what God has done for me, and so yeah, I do that, but I also regularly check in with a number of doctors at Vanderbilt and my local docs as well. So
Now, if I may be wrong on this, but at one point you were going to the NIH before all this got bad
mhm.
as like a test subject because of what you had was so rare, correct?
That's correct. That's right. So I was
Right.
about 11 or 12 years old, and I started going to the NIH at least annually at the time. Um, and I did that, I mean, up until I got fungal meningitis. I went pretty regularly there. I hadn't been there in a long time. And the bone marrow transplant had always been a cure for the disease. It was still, I mean, it's been developed for about 10 years or so, I guess I could say. But uh, I was always so healthy. And when they say that, I was relatively healthy. They either wanted younger people to go through it or they wanted people that were on their deathbed. And so it really wasn't until I was on my deathbed and this was the last possible solution they wanted me to go through that. So we'll go back again for a visit this summer, and I'll spend a couple days, and they'll run a barrage of tests and check on me. And but again, I'm being followed by a bunch of folks here, so we don't expect anything crazy to be found.
Yeah, you talked about being healthy, and I mean, I remember us playing basketball in my driveway.
Yeah,
We ran that 5K at night one time,
yeah, yeah.
together. So
I
it
remember that
wasn't
too.
like, yeah, it wasn't like that we were. I mean, you were just sickly all the time,
Hmm.
but you still had this disease that was affecting you every day of your life, but you
Hmm.
wasn't letting it affect you every day of your life. Is
Yeah,
what I was thinking.
that's right. No, I owe that, and I'll just tell you, I owe that to my parents. My mother was a single mom at 19 years old when I was born. At 20 years old, when I was 18 months old, she was told her son wasn't going to live past the age of 5. And she basically said, I remember her saying to me as a kid, "Hey, we're gonna do. You want to play baseball? Let's go play baseball. You want to do whatever? Let's go do whatever. And we're not going to let this disease keep you from living life." And so I just did. And my first question, whenever I'd get admitted, I mean, I had some serious infections as a kid.
Right.
My first question I would always ask is, how soon can I get out of here? I got to get back to school. Right?
I go back to baseball practice.
Yeah, and I don't want to upset the ladies, you know. Um, no, my favorite baseball story. I had a lung infection, fungal lung infection, and they had put what's called a Broviac catheter in my chest. So it's a tube that goes straight to your heart, delivers medicine straight to your heart, and it coiled around, and then there was this big bandage that would go over the top of it, and I went to baseball practice. We were playing Babe Ruth at the time. I went to Babe Ruth baseball practice, and the team had gotten in trouble, and we were being made to run laps around the field, and so I was running laps around the field with everybody, no big deal. And my grandpa was helping coach, and all of a sudden my head coach goes, "Powell, get over here!" And I ran over to the coach. "Yeah, coach, what's going on?" And my grandpa said, "Show him what's under your shirt." I said, "What?" And he said, "Show him it." So I lifted up my shirt, and there's this big, massive, medical device there. And his eyes got this big. He was like, "Do you need to go sit down?" It's like, "Nah, I'm all right. Can I finish running now?" "Yeah, go ahead." You know, that's just how I live. That my parents instilled in me when I was really young. I appreciate that.
Jeremy, I think that's awesome, man. It's funny. I was on the way home from work today listening to a radio show, and they were talking about kids these days, about how like parents can't roughhouse with them or this or that or whatever it is. But as a child, the overcoming of any sort of adversity builds character. And how we're, I
That's
mean,
right.
this is it's not related to what we're talking about right this minute, but it's just such a timely thing. And
Sure.
hey, and you know what? Kudos to your mom for saying, "Get out there and let's live, bro." That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
I got a couple questions if that's okay, guys. Um,
Yeah.
Yep.
Man.
and this is a hard one because I'm really good at surface stuff and surface questions. They come to me and I'm like, I don't. This is serious. This is real life stuff. But a couple things. Number one, like they say like as you age, right? I think I'm 50. I'm 52 this summer, and I'm like I'm a whole lot smarter than I used to be. At least in some ways, right? You just have experience, so I know like things not to do, whatever. But so I think experience certainly matures us. And you've preached before and you've preached after, right? And there's a lot to happen in the middle, and your perspective probably changes. Do you see the people that sit in your church different now? Do you have a different message for them? Do you have a different perspective? Like what's changed? Like, cause you've had this really really intense experience that's probably caused you to question God and probably caused you to really draw close. And you were put in a crucible to get where you are, and most of us don't go through that to
Mm,
force us to say you got to do some thinking. You got to do some thinking because you
Yeah.
can't do this yourself. You know,
yeah.
does it change? Does anything come to mind the way you like see just little Susie Smith sitting in the third row or whatever? You know what I'm saying?
The 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 first thing that comes to mind, I would think, would be empathy. Um, I I've been, I carried this disease my entire life. So I've always known, and I had preached before I got sick, that, that one day there will be an infection that takes my life.
Mm.
I
Right.
knew that. And so um, as far as like, making the most of the opportunity, or living life with the perspective, the live like you were dying. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I didn't go skydiving or riding a bull named
Red
Fu
Bull.
Manchu or anything like that. But like I always had that. But when it came to being able to be empathetic with people, in particular people that had lost some freedoms, the freedom to do things, or at least face the fear of the freedom of losing. So, my grandmother went through a thing, and she's in her 80s now, but this was a couple years ago. She right after I had gone through all my stuff and was beginning to get some motion back, and she got diagnosed with macular degeneration, and it scared, like, she like was freaking out about it. And my mother was just not very sympathetic towards her about it. She kept saying, it's going to be okay and you're going to be fine. And I can remember saying to my mom, hey, you need to understand, like, here you have an elderly woman that's living by herself, that's already having trouble getting around a little bit. And what she does for, like, what her fun thing is to read books.
Oh goodness.
And now they're telling her she might lose her eyesight. Like, that's terrifying to her. It's one more thing that she's not able to do. And so I think the empathy that I'm able to have with folks that are facing those kind of realities is maybe one of the biggest changes that I've seen.
That's awesome. That's cool. Uh, I don't know. The other question I have, I don't know if it really is applicable, but you preach the word, so you're probably as good as anybody to ask. And
We'll
especially,
see.
yeah, and especially given that you have a situation, but I mean you've got this life experience. Do you? And so I think this kind of goes along the line of good things happening to bad people.
Hmm.
I mean bad thing. Other way around. Take that. Reverse it.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
what you mean. Yeah.
Bad things happening to good people. Do you think that? Do you think it's a challenge for most folks? Let's say most folks that might go through something like this, or something, or whatever it is. Like you said, the job, the this, to that. Um, do you think most of us have? Do you think we really understand either the true nature of God, or the way we should pray, or the way we should accept what comes to us, that and maybe what keeps us from having that, to where it's like, hey, I'm willing to accept this, instead of just, we all want to fight so dang hard, it seems like. And that may be too much of a question for you to answer right now, but that's kind of, I'm like, hey man, this guy's gone through some stuff. How do you not want to wake up and want to burn down the entire city of Nashville just because,
How do you not get angry? Is that the question?
Well, that's part of it, but I think the bigger, at the more, the root of it is that he's a, like, I'm talking about maybe Christian folks, right? Even folks who are Christian and go to church or worship or whatever. Do you think that a lot of us maybe don't have a real good understanding of the nature of God and us, to where it's like, hey man, this is not just a wish list that you get to pray for. There are, like you said, sometimes you be careful what you ask for, because you don't get to negotiate the terms.
Right. Yeah. No, I think I do. You're absolutely right. I don't think that we have a good grasp of um, of what God at work in us really means. Um, so, for instance, I think I think about Isaiah 40, for instance, where God says that those that wait upon the Lord, He'll renew their strength. They'll run and not grow weary, and they'll walk and not faint. Because he says, do you not know, O hear, O Israel, do you not know the Lord your God is the everlasting God? The way the Hebrew there is worded is He is the God of the long view. And what I love about that is that says that God has a different perspective about things than we do. And so whereas we can get caught up in our momentary sufferings, the garbage that we have to go through, um, God has this more eternal perspective, where it's not just about Jeremy, it's about the people that Jeremy or the people that are going to come into contact with Jeremy. And it's not just about Jeremy's 45 or 75 or 105 years on this planet. It's about eternity. And when we're able to have that eternal perspective that God brings, then it allows us to deal with the momentary. It's what allowed Paul to say, "For I'm convinced that the momentary sufferings of this world are not worthy to be compared to the glory that is to be revealed to us in Christ Jesus." It's what allows us to go, hey, you know what? It does, because there's times where it sucks. There's times where it absolutely blows chunks. And if we did not believe, and this goes back to the hope, that there was something greater to come, then man, there's no reason to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
If this is all that there is, then what is there? So yeah, I don't think we have a good grasp of it, because we want God to be our genie in the bottle that gives us the things that we want right now and make us healthy, wealthy, wise, and beautiful. And listen, besides the four of us, that doesn't happen to people. That's right. That's right. So, yeah, I figured that would get Woodard there. But,
Doesn't take much.
yeah, that's right. So, anyway, not all of us can have it all. But so, yeah, I don't think we understand that well. I think that once again, God is this God of the long view, and that's something that's difficult for us, especially in the United States of America, where we are so blessed on so many levels to grasp.
Thank you.
Oh, here we go.
Great question, man.
You can tell the one who's the more intelligent of our group here.
Oh, is that it?
I
That's
listen.
Maddie.
I don't have kids. I spend a lot of time alone. I spend a lot of time thinking. So, like, I got to dump this out somewhere.
I mean, I think that as we grow up, I grew up in a church. Well, it's Church of God. It was the little yellow church in Fultondale, right up above the interstate, and outside of being scared to death every time I'd go in there. You don't ever question things, and then as you grow and as you get bigger, the life and everything you meet in life and everyone you talk to in life, especially in college, it's like you start thinking of all these things, and hopefully you get a little wiser. But a lot of times in my life, there's been plenty of times that I've been in a room and I didn't say really nice things to the man upstairs.
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to have faith and be able to be able to live in it every day. I mean, it's extremely hard. So.
Well,
I think we've all done that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not to an extent of cursing him, but
sure,
just to the point of saying, you know what, you really don't care about me, and here I am going through this, and all you're doing is worrying about everybody else, and it's a pity party, and it's human nature. It's part of fallen man.
Well, I mean,
because I mean, it's just like all the other sins. It's just part of his promise to us to make things better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had surrendered my life to ministry. I mean, I was going to be a doctor, and was on my way to doing that, and this was happening to me. Are you kidding me? And Chris, I'll commend you. I think, first of all, Scripture is full of people that not only questioned God, but said some really, really harsh things to God.
Sure.
And I tell people all the time, God's big enough to handle that. Man, and you're thinking it already. Don't compound that sin by just not telling him about it. He can handle it. And so,
I've had some wonderful conversations with him, but I've had some tough ones with him too.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. It's interesting. So.
I think he kind of likes to have those uncomfortable conversations. Uncomfortable to us, but for him, it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
I think I realized when everything I asked for from him. First of all, he knows if I need it or not, but also he's going to give me the ability to get wisdom, not just I'm going to turn around tomorrow and have wisdom. The ability to pick up these things that I'm asking for, and He's going to give me the ability to, in some way, if it's part of my, wonderment, I guess. He'll give me those opportunities. So I think that, dude, I'm all in, man. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I'm more all in today than I have ever been in my life, and
Mm.
I think it's fantastic. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah.
It is an
Well,
amazing.
man,
Go ahead,
go
brother.
ahead, Matt.
All right, I was just going to say it's an amazing. It is amazing how you're. I think the challenge of anybody who's in spiritual leadership or anybody at all really is trying to shape perspective to where we are able to hear and able to take that and put it into use. And I think it, in my opinion, is especially challenging in churches for people who have been in churches for a long time, because I spent a long time in church every Sunday and a lot of times on Wednesday, and I know all the things to say, and I can,
Right. That's right.
you say it, I was like, yep, heard that. I probably finish your sentence. But I think it is converting that to what it actually really means, because they are beautiful words, and I think the true
Mm-hmm.
beauty comes when you say those words and you know what they mean and you know why they were said to you, and that, and you can find it, kind of have some peace, but it is also very interesting how, because I've spent quite a bit of time being a little bit pissed at church, which
Mm-hmm.
is really really my own problem. That's a long story, but
We have them, bro. We
I
have
know, I
'em.
know. And then the one where you think was like, well, I'm probably not cursing at God, but I am telling him I know better than he does, because I'm just going to do it my way. I'm going to pray the right prayer. I'm going to pray the right prayer, and then I'm just going to do what I want to do anyway. Um,
That's right.
and I think that's amazing. But you'll see, like talking to Jeremy tonight, or some people that that come across you. It's like, man, that there's these little seeds that are planted, that if he who has ears, let them hear. If you have the ears to actually hear, there are things to hear. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think to me it goes back to like understanding, like who this person in the sky, the sky really, who this really is, what the real nature of it is, and what does this really mean. Besides, this Bible verse is not a poem. It there's something there. Um,
Right.
but man, it takes a who knows? Some people it doesn't take that long. Some people it takes a long time. But interesting how it goes.
It's also
Absolutely.
interesting how it goes for different people. I mean, we all four have different paths. We
Yeah.
all four have different things that we get from, um, going to church and listening to sermons and praying and this and that. And it's man. I mean, I think if it was a book of mathematics, um, it might be a little easier because everybody's going to get something different from
Mm-hmm.
from the whole thing. As long as I guess I don't know. I'm rambling here, but
I don't.
you know
I
what I'm
really
saying.
sucked at math now, so
You know
I
what I'm
mean,
talking about.
How's your spelling?
That's probably
look,
terrible, right?
the spelling was good.
The
It's
thing
just
I
the
want to
English
know is, in
teachers.
the backyard pickup game, who had the better shot, you or Jeremy Powell?
Mm.
I
Because
was
I've
I
seen
was
you.
gonna ask about the round shot that Warren would throw up.
Well,
We were playing on a little goal too,
we
so we would
did.
dunk.
We were trying to be big guys on an 8 foot goal. It
Love
was
it.
Footer.
Those are the best
It
days
was
right.
ever.
massive.
Oh, we
Whenever
had
we
four.
wanted to feel good about ourselves, we'd have Dalen come out and block his shots because
When
That's
you
right.
still could.
We'd put
When
him
you
over
still
in the
could.
next door
when
neighbor's
we still
yard.
could. That's right. When he was like 4'2", we could do that.
Hey, I wanted to throw out some kudos
Uh,
to the guy who once said, hey, you know what, y'all? We don't have to put this hoop 10 feet in the air. We can put this hoop at about 8 feet in the air, and it'd change the game for everybody. I
Right.
like that guy.
Absolutely.
Man, I remember going to slam goals in Gardner. I don't know if you guys ever went up there, did you?
oh yeah.
I don't know what you're
Oh
talking
my
about.
goodness, we used to have some fun. We were doing 360s and everything, but it was like I think it was 7.5 foot actually, but we are doing all kind of just. I mean, we're just.
Yeah.
It was like when the slam dunk contest was Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan, and
Oh
we're up there
yeah.
doing. We used to have fun up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bruises all over your wrists. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yes.
Well, Powell, tell them about your website and
Yeah.
kind of how you can continue on with your
Yeah.
story, how you're kind of doing that day by day. I mean, week by week, I guess.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's all kinds of additional stories to what we shared today. I just and even though I talked for a long time, I give you the Reader's Digest version. The JeremyPowell.com is the website, and there's a number of things that are there, but the Finding Hope link there is the link to my blog. I'd encourage you to go all the way back to the very beginning. I try to write a post a week. Is my goal. There's some weeks that early on that I got to post in there, but I write about once a week. You can subscribe there on the website and get it sent directly to your email. But you can check that out. There's also links there. I shared my story at a church and on another podcast. I'll put up a link to this podcast there as well, so folks can find you guys and hear the story. We just want to share the hope wherever it is that we can.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, you definitely been. It's been beneficial for me again. So,
man, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on. Miss you, Jeremy. Tell your family I said hello.
We're just.
I will. Maybe we can get up there sometime.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what is it?
I just want to casually ignore the fact that Chris Powell's pointing at Cam Newton or some other.
Yeah, I can't tell who it is other than he's wearing a white Auburn uniform.
That's my sign. That's my sign. That's my signed ones. I got them in a frame. So.
Oh,
I think that was Butterbean. That was Butterbean.
Hey,
man, we got to talk about his story.
The only signed Auburn thing I have is a Gene Chizik.
I knew it. I knew it. Jeez.
In fact, I have two Gene Chizik autographs. One that was gotten for me by a buddy when I was in the hospital with my meningitis, and the other one that has him holding up the national championship
Very
trophy.
nice.
I like Chiz. I like Chiz.
I'm gonna say one more thing.
I was not a fan. His last name was a curse word in my house, but that's all right.
One good thing about what we did today was because we had the hearing problems. I didn't butt in on you all the time. The whole time you were sitting there trying to tell your story.
Amen.
Good.
Amen.
That's the thing I have. I'm trying to get better, but I'm just.
Well, listen, you and me both, man. I'm a preacher. Yeah, I tell people all the time, you just got to stop me from talking because I'll just keep going.
Right.
Now, I think it worked out great, and I think it was awesome, and I really appreciate you doing it for us.
Absolutely.
Hey, man, my pleasure. Hey, Jeremy, I know that you guys are probably going to post all of this, edit all of this, but we had one time Jeremy shut me up in church. I was doing a sermon illustration, and I wanted the sound that gets played when you get a text message. So I actually had my phone on the stage with me, and I played the sound you get when you get a text message. And Woodard is sitting in the back of the sanctuary, and he starts texting me. And something goes wrong in my phone, and I got probably 25 texts in a row from Jeremy Woodard. And so I'm preaching, and my phone is just going off and off and off. And I finally threw my phone to my wife on the front row and said, just turn it off. Just turn it off. And afterwards, they were all from Jeremy Woodard.
Still sitting in the back row of church, huh, buddy?
Here's the honest truth. If I had my hand on the Bible, whatever, I only sent one. That was the crazy thing.
I believe it. For some reason, it just kept sending. Yeah.
But yeah, now, afterwards I was like, I swear I didn't mean to. I didn't do it. I didn't.